Welcome back, everybody, to the Rock and Blues Experience. Coming up on this edition of the show, we talk to Gil Moore, founder member of one of the most successful bands of the late 70s and the early 80s, Triumph. The story of three young musicians who had a dream to become the biggest rock and roll band in the world. And for a short time, they were exactly that. Gil joined me to look back at some of the key moments in the band's history, and we look ahead to the all-star tribute album. It's called Magic Power, which is coming later in the month, and this incredible array of artists that is on it, including the likes of Ann Wilson / Dean Castronova, Dee Snider's on it, Sebastian Bach is on it, and that is just a very small selection of the musicians involved. Now, Danny Bowes is taking his one-man show, Maximum Chat, out on the road in the first weeks of June. It's been a really tough, horrific couple of years for Danny, but he is getting stronger, both physically and mentally, day by day. And that razor-sharp wit and the humour is as vibrant as ever. If you missed the recent show that we did with Danny, then here's a clip with him talking about life on the road with Francis Rossi and Status Quo.
I'll tell you a funny story about Francis Rossi. We did a tour with them, late 90s, across Europe. It was a month long, an absolutely brilliant tour. I mean, they were fantastic every night. Audience loved them. We went out, smashed it every night. And then on the last night of the tour, we were invited to the both bands and all the crews for dinner. Absolutely brilliant. So we went out, I think it was the last night off before the tour ended, and we're chatting away at the table, and Francis said to me, "How you enjoyed it?" I said, "It's been fantastic." He said, "Really? We had a good time?" I said, "Yeah, we've loved it. Absolutely loved it." He said, Great. Well, we've loved having you. Band love you, crew love you, audience love you. Brilliant." So I said, "Oh, thanks very much." And he said, "But we won't have you again." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I'll be honest with you, you make me work too hard." And I said, "Well, at least you're honest, you know." And every time I ran into him after that, honestly, could be an award show or whatever it was, every time I walked in, he would say to me, "Oh, you again. I just had to fire another support band because they were too good. This is all your fault." And I said, "It can't be my fault. I don't even know they are." You know, he's just he's just very regular. Very, always been lovely to us. So, despite the fact that he would never have us on the bill again, nice man.
He is such a great storyteller, Danny Bowes. Really is. The live show is going to be stuffed with great tales from a career that spans 4 decades. And if you want to watch the rest of that feature, then go to the website www.therockandbluesexperience.com, and you can find it there, or on the YouTube channel, or on the Facebook pages as well. And now then to a true rock and roll icon, Dion DiMucci, and the story behind one of the great rock and roll tracks, The Wanderer. It was released back in 1961, and over the years, it's been covered by a vast array of artists, from the Beach Boys, Bruce Springsteen, even Status Quo did it. The irony of the Quo version is that it actually went higher in the charts in the UK than the original did. Now, Dion was on the show a while back, and we talked about the story of that song. Who exactly was the Wanderer, and why only one musician, Bruce Springsteen, worked out what the story was trying to portray and tell us.
And tell me, what happened to Jackie Burns, who obviously was the subject in the Wanderer? He was the Wanderer. So did he know, first of all, that song was written about him? Did you ever tell him? And whatever happened to him?
I think he's gone now. You know, I think he passed away. But Jackie Burns was kind of like he was bigger than life. You know, he used to walk down the neighborhood with his tank top and his curls drooped in front of his forehead, with his tattoos, Flo and Janie and Rosie, you know, and just, you know, he had this gait, you know, and he attitude. He was worth the song, you know. But I don't. You want to know? I don't think he ever knew the song was about him. You know.
Bruce Springsteen said about that song that if people get it, if people really get what that song was about, then they'd find out what a man should be. What did he mean? I mean, I know that the lines in it's basically about going nowhere. It's not a song that glorifies anything, but it's about going nowhere. So what did he mean by that, about what a man should be?
Well, a lot of people think they listen to the verses. You know, it's like, I'm the type of, it's one of those bragging rights songs. It's so over the top. It's ridiculous. You know, I got Flo on my left arm, Mary on my right. Janie is the girl that I'll be with tonight. And when she asks me which one I love the best, I tear open my shirt and I show Rosie on my chest. Yo, I'm the wanderer. And then Springsteen got the lines, I roam from town to town. I go through life without a care. I'm as happy as a clown with my 2 fists of iron, but I'm going nowhere. And then he goes right back into being a jerk, you know, but the wanderer, he for one moment, he sees himself, you know, he knows he's going nowhere. And it's not that happy, you know, back then. I guess if somebody did it today, they would do it in a with a different arrangement, not in a major key, you know. But back then, everything had to be happy and up, you know. So, but yeah, he was onto it. He thought if you see yourself accurately, you know, that guy, the Wanderer, is a thin veneer of a man.
Well, that feature with Dion is also available on the website, YouTube, and Facebook pages. He's an extraordinary musician and human being as well, who is enjoying a prolonged spell back in the limelight. His recent releases include the excellent Girlfriends album, which was released, just about a year ago, or just over a year ago. And if you go back a couple of years before that, Blues with Friends was fantastic as well. All of them worth checking out. And that brings us to Gil Moore of Triumph. Not only were they very successful, they were also 3 of the nicest guys in the music business, and remain so to this very day. They never fell foul to drink or drugs. There were no lurid headlines and expensive divorces. All they did was spend money on kit and lights. They were 3 very focused musicians with one objective: to become the biggest rock and roll band in the world. And as we said, for a while they were exactly that. As for the fans, well, Sebastian Bach, in the intro to that film Rock and Roll Machine, which you might have seen a couple of years ago, he summed it up perfectly. He said, 3 guys from Toronto that blow shit up. What's not to like? Beautifully put. I met up with Gil a few days ago to talk Triumph and to look ahead to this great all-star magic tribute album. And he also reveals more details of the Triumph experience, which will be coming soon.
We have a Triumph tribute album that is coming out, Magic Power. But before we get there, let's look at some of the aspects of this incredible journey, which all began over 50 years ago. And indeed, it is the 50th anniversary this year of your live debut. August the 17th, there was a gig listed in San Antonio. I don't know what that was back in 75, but Simcoe High School in September in 75. So 50 years. Incredible.
It's been a long ride. And, you know, what's really most amazing, I guess, Tim, over the decades is the fans' dedication to the band and how they just don't forget. I mean, you mentioned the first gig we ever played, you know, in a high school here in Southern Ontario. And we still get people that say, I was at that show. You know, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. You mentioned San Antonio, which of course was sort of the American debut of of the band in a bigger venue, and there's still people that put ticket stubs up on. I was there. I can't believe it. Never mind things like the US Festival where there was hundreds of thousands of people that were aware of it. I mean, these initial shows when they first started. I mean, you'd think they would have been long forgotten before, but they're not long forgotten. It's amazing, actually.
If there is a template, if somebody was to sit down and write a template, a book for the right way to go about becoming successful, you guys, or in particular, you and Mike would have wrote it. You had that moment, didn't you? Listen, we need to get serious. Are we going to get serious? When you ended the chapter with Abernathy, that amazing band name, the Wash and Dry, Shagmaster's Wash and Dry, which was possibly one of the best names of a band ever. But you had the light bulb moment, and you're sitting there, you say, right, are we going to get serious? Right. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, we did. And Mike and I realized that we couldn't do it with the members of the band that we had at that moment. I mean, the vision that we had was for a power trio, which is not what Abernathy Shagmaster was, and by any means. And we didn't know Rick at this point. And we went through a couple other guitar players, on the journey to find Rick, that didn't pan out. And then we got lucky when we found Rick, because it was when we first jammed in a basement after meeting Rick that we realized, you know what, we think this might work, because you don't really know until you play for an audience. Sure. But we were convinced amongst the three of us that we had the right chefs in the kitchen at that moment. And then, of course, as you mentioned, that first show in a little high school gym, the reaction to the band was something that none of us had ever seen in any of our bands that we played in previously. And we realized, well, maybe we got a little bit of lightning in the bottle, or maybe there's a spark here at least, and we can build on this. So we got off to a fast start, I guess.
Yeah, that kneading of the guitar god, the story is fabulous. Again, you end up rocking up and singing. The band was called Act 3, wasn't it? They were a bit of a prog band. But this guy, Rick Emmett, and this is where the story is just fabulous. What made your minds up was seeing him do a flying V across the stage, his shoe coming off, and he carried on as if nothing had happened. It was almost a Spinal Tap moment, where what's his name had his arm outside of the clamshell that was keeping him in that film. But he carried on, didn't miss a beat, and you're like, this is the guy for us.
Yeah, it indeed was a Spinal Tap moment. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. And I mean, that's the thing with Triumph over the years. There were I guess every hard rock band, there are always these Spinal Tap moments that the guys in the band are aware of, and they stick like glue in your head. And part of the benefit of that, I think, is that, there's a lot of slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that go along with being in a hard rock band and playing shows in city after city after city. And having those humorous elements were things that kept the three of us laughing. And I've said many times, humor is what kept the band together. Yeah, we were serious about our music. We were serious about our show. We were serious about, trying to, as all musicians are, you're trying to avoid failure at all costs.
Did you actually say at the time to Mike, yeah, all right, he can play, he looks good, but can he play Whole Lot of Love?
No, I didn't do that. I don't know where that rumor started.
Now, as well as this musical talent, which you all obviously had, something else which is completely alien to many is this business acumen that you had, which is rare. So, you sit down with Rick, you wave a check in front of him and say, right, here's $175. Do you want to join?
Yeah, that's a funny story. But, Mike, I think it was our fathers, because Mike's father, Sam, late great Sam Levine, was He was the head of the musicians union, and he was
Right.
a great bass player. He was the lead double bass in the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. So he was a master musician, but he was also very smart in business. And my father was in business in the rubber business with B.F. Goodrich, and he passed along everything that he had learned in business to me. And he, of course, he fought in the war, so he learned a lot of principles unrelated to business. But when you've been in a situation where you might get shot down
Sure.
in a Lancaster bomber, it teaches you a lot about life and about determination, and how gives you some guiding principles, I'll say, that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I credit my dad with the tremendous amount of help that he gave me. So between Mike and I, and Rick didn't really have the benefit of those, I'll call them business mentors. Rick was great in that he went along because he knew that we had a lot of good advice, and that was critical as far as getting the band off the ground.
So Mike had experience with record companies, his friend being that senior executive at Attic Records. He bought into the Tribe idea, but again, more sales and business savvy, because he sold him a dream. I'm going to create the biggest rock and roll band in the world. And it was literally, all right then. I mean, it's just the way things were happening for you. It's almost that nothing was off the table and anything was possible.
Yeah, we were over the tips of our skis for sure. And we would sort of pump each other up. Our heads were full of helium, really, because you're like any other band when you start. You really don't know what you're doing, but you pretend you do. And but Mike was very skilled in that regard. And, if he hadn't had that previous experience, would we have gotten a record deal? Perhaps not. I mean, I almost don't know a story about a band that was successful that didn't have a terrible time trying to get a record deal.
Yeah, sure.
Stories of great bands that couldn't get record deals until the 10th time are legendary. But we got a record deal right out of the gate before Rick, we'd even found Rick, because Mike was able to convince. We had a stupid poster with a devil's head on it, because there were no three musicians, so we had a devil's head coming out of a flaming sea. And they looked at it and they go, well, what's this? And we went, well, can't you see? It's a devil coming out of the sea. It's great. The sea's burning. Makes a lot of sense. It was very Spinal Tap-ish. But they bought into it. And, they gave us money to make a record. And then we found Rick. And then we did look like we knew what we were doing.
Three guys with a dream who had a plan. Now you had a job to do on top of it, But right at the get-go, again, great decision-making from you guys, because rather than do what others would have done, which was go out and spend it on drugs, booze, and women, you invest in the band. You get kit, lots of kit. You have a big truck with your name on it. And this old adage that you had at the time, go big or go home. Whatever we could afford to do, we did. If it meant no pay, then there was no pay.
Yeah, you're right, Tim. I mean, a lot of bands, especially hard rock bands, they blew their money on booze and drugs and women, and then the rest of their money, they just wasted it.
I knew that was coming.
And I was always into the gear, and I was always saying, let's get more of this and more of that. And we just started, like you said, we plowed the money back into the equipment, and a lot of it was kind of naive, kind of homemade stuff. But we were always trying to do something that was going to enhance the performance one way or the other, either bigger sound or bigger show. And we enjoyed doing that. We operated kind of more like a sports team from an attitude point of view. Because with only three musicians, it was kind of like, okay, let's get out. We got to win the game. How are we going to win the game? So the more, sort of we were able to create this theater around what we were doing. It was like the theater was the fourth band member, and it gave us a space in which to operate. And that never changed the whole career of the band. We were always, working on that, the theatrical aspect of it. I mean, it never superseded what we did, even though a few critics accused us of it. Music was always the most important thing, but this was definitely something that we believed in, investing back into it so that the audience wasn't getting cheated with just the same old.
And then you get all the licenses. You get the government license to enable you to get hold of all of the kit to work on with the pyros. And there you are in your garage, your garages. This is at home, perfecting the use of pyros, seeing what had worked, trying to get the right mixtures. And it was not, was it, without the odd accident, including one very famous one with you blowing out a picture window at your house.
Well, yeah, that's true. I did. And there's back, you have to remember in those days, there were no professional pyros. I mean, this was, at the very, very, very beginning, so there were some companies that had invented some pyro powders and stuff like that. It had really evolved out of the magic world, of things like, flash paper and fire breathing and all of that kind of stuff. So I was experimenting with all this stuff, but when you're a kid, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what risks you're taking. And, so we managed to blow ourselves up, a number of times. We all got hit. We all got burned one way or the other. Fortunately, we never hurt anybody else, which was great. The only people we hurt were ourselves, but nowadays it's all regulated. There's professionals that are licensed. It's a whole different deal. That was the Wild West.
On stage, you had to start using pyro cues, didn't you? The red light comes on, get out the way.
Yeah, we had some pretty serious stuff going on, and you had to keep your distance.
So every Cinderella story, there's a moment that you can point to in the years gone by and say, that is where it all began. That's when it became real. And that was when Sammy Hagar, pulling out of the event in San Antonio, you step in last minute, you had your own guitars, but it was all hired in kit. And from that moment on, you never looked back. That was it. It was the touch paper had been lit. Everything from that moment on was just 100 miles an hour. But what a moment.
Yeah, Tim, it was incredible, really, because we were not ready for prime time. I mean, we were still, like a fledgling band playing, at that point, the biggest thing we'd ever play is probably like 1,000 seats or 1,500 seats or something like that. And the Municipal Auditorium was 5,500. It's burned down now, but, that was a big leap. Plus, it was a leap into Texas, where we'd never been. And, we were thinking, well, there might be a lot of ticket refunds when Sammy he bailed out on the promoter. I mean, he did us a huge favor when he did that. He went to open for Kiss at Madison Square Garden. The promoter called us because we were getting all this airplay. And it's a fairy tale story. And he said, well, you come down here. And I said, we were like, well, won't you have to give a bunch of refunds? And they went, we don't think so. Like, your record is just like knocking it out of the park here in San Antonio. We think that, we may give a few refunds, but we also get some uptake. It's hard to say. The darn thing sold out clean. There wasn't one seat available. We go down there, we're scared to death because, like I said, we're way over our heads at this point. But from the minute we walked on stage to the minute we left stage, it was like two different bands, because when we're in the dressing room before we go on, we're kind of scared to death. Well, we've never done this before. I hope we don't screw it up. And then when we came off, after the place was going crazy and encores and everything like that, and we're in the dressing room, this is the first time we ever played a big venue, or biggest at that point it was. And we realized it worked. Suddenly the proof's in the pudding, just like that in one show. And then all of a sudden your confidence level goes through the roof. And all of a sudden, playing, venues of that size, let's say, didn't really mean much. And it was just like rinse and repeat. We can do this. And then, of course, it's a very easy leap from 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 15,000, and then, to festivals and 100,000. It's a very, very easy leap.
That is exactly what you did, isn't it? Because you went back to Canada, and within what, a month, Massey Hall has gone, and the old arts centre, the Performing Arts Centre where you were, those venues are now out of it, because for a start, none of them would allow you to use pyro. And then you said, well, let's just go to Maple Leaf Gardens then. And the promoter turned around and said, well, you must be, are you sure? You'll never sell it out. But you did, and more.
Yeah, I mean, there was some trepidation on our part there because, again, that was a leap into a major hockey arena. But we did have, the benefit of we already knew how to play to a big crowd now. So it was, if it wasn't for the fact that it was a hometown gig, it probably wouldn't have been as nerve wracking. But we had the very same experience there. We played, it worked. The tickets were sold. The audience reacted. Like everything was like, okay, we're on a roll now. Now all we've got to do is get into the arena circuit in America, which is exactly what happened. Okay, so
you played that night, didn't you, at Maple Leaf Gardens for no guarantee, but you got the ticket sales.
Yeah, well, I don't blame Michael Cole at the time. I mean, he was like, you guys aren't ready to play Maple Leaf Gardens. You haven't even sold out Massey Hall yet. But of course, we got barred from playing Massey Hall because the fire marshal wouldn't let us play there because it was an older theater. And the fire marshal did us a huge favor. And so our the decision at that point to Michael was, okay, well, if you don't believe it, don't guarantee us any money. We'll just play for percentage, and we'll show you. And we did, and it worked. He sold the tickets. Everything worked out great, and the rest is history. So
word goes out, show's getting bigger. You're winning all sorts of awards for innovation in your shows, as well as the music, the innovation in the shows. I think that was Performance Magazine. And clearly what was known as the NGE, the net gasp effect, was working a dream.
Yeah, so we invented that phrase because we always felt the show should have these punch moments of one sort or another. So they would always be based on a musical moment or beat, let's call it, or some sort of a milestone moment within the performance. But we always tried to do something, with the theater of it, with lighting or with lasers or, with any sorts of there were no such thing as moving lights, but we had invented a few, things that emulated moving lights back then. Like for example, something as simple as police car lights. And
yeah, sure.
We're always trying to come up with something, fog, like just make the thing bigger than it really is. So what we would do is we would gauge the audience reaction to what we were doing by, how far the jaw would drop. So the net gasp effect meant,
it's a great line.
That was great, net gasp effect.
Yeah.
Because the bands, when you're a young musician and you're playing and trying to get your way out of the Joe's Bar or the church basement or whatever, you're used to people yawning and going to the washroom and oh, these guys, whatever. You're used to those kind of facial expressions. So what you really want is you want the audience, closing in on the stage. And so that was our funny way of talking about the jaw drop.
How hacked off were you, right, when the Jacksons rolled in to have a look at your show? Because they'd heard about how great this band and the light show and the whole event was. So they come in, they watch it, and they agree everything's fabulous. They meet you, they talk to you, and then they end up stealing your lighting director.
Well, it's been exaggerated, let's say, over the years. They didn't really steal anything. Let's face it, everybody gets ideas from everybody else, and we start with Led Zeppelin and how many guitar players learned something from Jimmy Page. So as far as the show went, that's a true story. I mean, they just came in, they heard that what we were doing was something special, and they were looking for something, to take out with, at the time, what they called the Victory Tour.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool. We met him in a restaurant, several of the guys in a restaurant in New York, a few years later, and we chatted about it. So I don't know, but there was no comparison between the bands or the audiences, for that matter. The fans of the Jacksons, I don't believe were Triumph fans so much, and vice versa. So I don't know that there was much crossover.
200 live gigs a year or more, and then 1980, you make it to the UK. November the 6th, 1980, you're playing at the Gaumont in Southampton. And November the 7th, I remember because I was there
Wow.
at the Colston Hall in Bristol. You had a guy called, was it Bill Churchman, who was driving you around as well at the time. So what were your memories of Rocky, apart from the fact that the weather's crap and the hotels weren't very good and didn't have radiators?
Well, you forgot the food. I think the problem that we had is if for whatever bad luck reason, it seemed like either Mike or Rick or myself would get sick every time we came to the UK. Guaranteed. It couldn't have been Mike who didn't sing lead vocals. It had to be me or it had to be Rick that would get the upper respiratory thing going. But seriously, no, I do remember those times. And Bill Churchman, who we adored Bill, and of course he pronounced his first name Bill. So on day one, we all looked at each other in the back of his Daimler, and we said, "Well, we're going to call him Bill from now on." He was a great guy, and he was way beyond a limo driver. He was a I don't know how to describe him. He was an amazing chaperone for these three lunatic kids from Canada that were over there, not knowing what they were doing.
6 months later, you're back in the summer because of the festival season, which were just getting going over here. They had the new wave of British heavy metal and all of that. But you had an appearance, a very memorable day at Port Vale Football Ground for Motorhead Aussie. Frank Marino was on there, Mahogany Rush, Riot and Vardis. You carried Phil Campbell up the steps onto the stage because he'd had so much booze to get him to stand up to introduce you.
Well, you know what? We love the guys in Motorhead, I got to tell you. And, Ozzy was there, and he was a very affable Ozzy at that time. That was the first time we met him, actually. And it was some kind of gig. Unfortunately for us, that was the one time in our career where we had an unfortunate mishap with the PA system. For some reason or other, 50% of the PA system died, like right out of the gate, like either in our first song or shortly thereafter. I can't remember. And we all looked at each other like, what the heck? The sound just fell apart. And we had to keep soldiering on because it was a festival. We couldn't, kind of stop. It wasn't our PA system. It was the festival's PA system. So it was tough to play that, but it was a lot of fun to be there. It was a lot of fun to, hang with some of those guys. And as you mentioned, Phil was, he was a lot of fun.
The most memorable live event has got to be the Heavy Metal Sunday 1983 in California. And they changed the format of that festival. Mark Wozniak and Bill changed it. And you'd had the New Wave Saturday. I think David Bowie was there. You two were there. But Heavy Metal Sunday with Van Halen, Scorpions, Ozzy Osbourne, Priest, Crew, Quiet Riot was outsold everything else by 2-1. That's how popular it was. And I think, wasn't that the first event where a band, i.e. Van Halen, picked up a 1 million advance for an appearance at a festival?
Yeah, I mean, now it seems like the dollars have changed so much. I mean, there's lots of acts now that get $1 million to a show, but there was nobody getting $1 million then. That was bands were still well paid. Of course, if they could sell out arenas, they were getting well paid. But you got to remember, tickets were what, $15 for most shows. Now they're not even close to that. So it was a different era altogether. But that was a massive show. And by that time, it was 83. So we actually did, obviously we graduated through the ranks, and it was kind of no big deal. I mean, it was as big as that festival was. It was like, yeah, we're used to playing in stadiums. This will be bigger than a stadium, but it's a
Do you
big
remember seeing Eddie Van Halen on stage? What was your initial reaction if you saw him? If it was the first time you saw him, was it some sort of like wow moment?
Yeah, I mean, Van Halen's a great band. Eddie's a great guitarist. But I think the guitarists that I personally tend to
Yeah.
gravitate towards, of course, I love Rick's playing. Obviously, I'm biased there. But other guitarists, I think, that have come out of more of the British mold that came from the Ritchie Blackmore school
Sure.
the Jimmy Page school. And to me, those guys, and again, I'm a drummer, so who am I to say this? But to me, it gets back to the blues. It gets back to Albert King playing guitar and things like that, and how they adapted blues guitar
Absolutely.
into rock. How Eric Clapton, through the Yardbirds and so on, and how that evolved. And so many, as you know, Tim, so many great guitarists came from the UK. So I
Before
didn't
we
really
come full circle to
never.
this new album, one other business decision that you made really does stand out, and it's when you signed the rights of your music and Universal took over the rights. You loaned them. You let them have it. It was basically a lease, and everything came back to you after a decade. And again, possibly one of the smartest moves a band's ever made. Because again, you see people now going, well, we can't get this out because they own that and they own that. And we can't get them to agree to do anything. So in terms of the smart decisions that you made, was that about the smartest decision you made?
Well, it was good. I mean, I'll go back and we were young guys. I mean, I'll credit our fathers, business influence, like we talked about earlier in the interview, that it didn't seem logical to, give a lot of things up. So I know that when we played the US Festival, and the contracts came through and so on, and I told our agent at the time, they're going to record the performance, so I don't want them to own that. So it became a negotiating point, and like every other thing. But we were the only band, as far as I know, we were the only band at the US Festival that ended up, owning the rights to everything that was done, and we just licensed back. Our team licensed back their broadcast rights for the windows that they chose on. I think it was Showtime at the time, and somehow just knew that, well, down the road, this is going to be something that we want to control. So, I mean, through that, I got to meet Steve, which was great because we've been lifelong friends. And, we were, I think, the only band, certainly on Heavy Metal Sunday, we were the only band that he introduced on stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And I always thought he was a genius. I still think he's a genius. And we've remained friends all these years.
So here we are, 2025, and over the last few years, we've had the renaissance, if you like. We had the excellent biopic, Rock and Roll Machine, and now we have Magic Power, this fabulous all-star tribute. It's been in the making for a few years. And what stands out here is the A-list of contributors that you've got. Sebastian Bach, Carrie Ann Aronoff, Joey Belladonna's there, Tommy Aldridge, Lawrence Gowan, Slash, Dean Castanova, Nancy Wilson. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Dee Snider. How impressed are you with what has been produced here? Because it is, on first listen, it's fantastic.
Tim, honestly, the band, I can speak for Mike and Rick. Like we were really humbled that these great musicians and singers would play on this album. And Mike Klink obviously did a masterful job on the recordings and the mixing and supervising everything, and credit goes to him for putting this together. But we feel a real debt of gratitude, not just to Mike but to all these great musicians. And it's listening to it. It's just something as a young band, I still, as Mike and Rick do when we get together, a lot of times what we talk about, we don't talk about when the band was successful and we were doing big things. we tend to talk about when we first started and we didn't know what we were doing. That's the funny stuff. And you see, you never can imagine, that like things like Hall of Fame awards or gold records or, much less a tribute album. Those are so fanciful that they don't really even cross your mind. And then when it finally happens, you kind of just let, I don't know, you're somewhat speechless other than just to say thank you to these people, because it really is nice that they did this.
Because let's be honest, I said this to you at the start, 20 minutes ago or so. Most tribute albums, I think we're allowed to say, really, they are crap. I mean, they really are. I mean, you're not going to buy that to put it on, or if you do, they've caught you in a weak moment. You've seen it with money off. It's a vanity project, basically. But this is very, very different, and you can tell the amount of work and the love that has gone into this. Yeah, who's going to sing what track? What is the optimum voice, the optimum performance of the guitar player and the drummer? Which ones are going to sit perfectly here? They haven't just said, right, okay, we got a list of the greatest hits. Here's the bag, and we're just going to pull names out of a hat. There's a lot of thought that has gone into this, and it just sounds like a great new rock album, to be honest.
Well, again, if you look at, Mike's credentials, from Guns N' Roses to Metallica to all the stuff that he's done, and you just realize he's a master in the studio. You put him behind the big board and you have a lot of people comfortable on the other side of the board, whether they're playing guitar or drums or singing or whatever the case may be. And he as you say, he custom tailored or took a bespoke approach to all the songs, and it really shows. It doesn't matter what instrument you talk about, whether it's bass guitar or drums or singing or any of the instruments. The guitar players, you just go through the list and you listen to the tracks that they recorded, and there's something for everybody. Like I said earlier, I mean, jokingly, if you didn't like Triumph, it would be a great record for all these other people, regardless of Triumph.
Do you still love, though?
Yeah. I mean, Triumph's not on it. Let's face it. This is not our album. It's their album.
Do you still love the fact that you can sit down and you can look at these guys and you can look at what they've said in the sleeve notes and whatever? Dean Castronovo. Hey, no Gil, no Dean Castronovo. I learned everything off of this guy, and how your careers affected them when they were young. You were the catalyst for them to become involved in the business and become a rock star. Does that give you this sort of warm glow inside, a feeling of satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what Dean said, and I mean, anyone that's seen Journey, it realizes what a great drummer he is, and more incredibly, really, because there's not many drummers that sing. He's an unreal singer. He's just amazing.
Yeah, he is.
And I would not wish on my worst enemy having to sing Rick Emmett's songs, because the vocal is so high. You better have tight pants on for sure if you're going to take a shot at it. But I mean, Dean can just knock it out of the park. And, the things that he said were very kind. I mean, he gives me far too much credit. It's, I don't know. It really was. Yeah. What did you say? It warms your heart or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you nailed it, Tim. It's very nice what Dean said, and even more, his performance is absolutely outstanding. So he's a great singer. He's a great drummer.
And as well as the album, you're taking advantage of all of this sort of upsurge in interest in you guys and your careers, because there is in production, if you like to call it, the Triumph live experience in the making. You're working with Paul Dexter, the guy who was worked with you on the lighting way back, who was on the Dio and Frank Zappa hologram. What's the timeline on this? When do you think that you will be happy taking it to the world?
Well, Tim, we've been working. Paul and I started this, as you mentioned, I guess maybe 5 years ago or thereabouts. And I was really just kind of doing experiments. I'd heard about holograms, and I saw, the work he did with Dio. God rest Ronnie, and uh, that got me a little bit interested because I thought I don't think Triumph's going to be able to play live shows anymore at this stage, but maybe this is a way we can kind of keep the band intact. And it was really because the relentless amount of correspondence we get, especially over social media from Triumph fans saying, one more tour, one more tour, one more tour. It's just like an echo in the room that just keeps going. So I was thinking, how can we do this? Mike and Rick thought I was crazy, probably, but anyway, I got together with Paul, and then they thought we were both crazy. But we came up with an idea to move this into mixed reality and get away from these hologram tours, because the hologram is not the hologram itself is nice, but it's not what Triumph. It wouldn't work with Triumph the way Paul and I envisioned it. So we need a different direction, and we weren't sure what the direction was. So we've been experimenting with different technologies and so on. We've been about through 3 or 4 of them, but where we've landed now, we feel like the technology we have nailed. But I think more importantly is somewhere along the journey, Paul and I realized it's about more than technology. It's about more than the presentation of the show. It's about the feel. It's about the narrative. It's about the experience. And so we didn't know it's not a play. It's not a movie. It's not a concert. It's kind of all of those things mixed together like a tossed salad. But what keeps that together, or keeps a focus on it, or gives it its heart, is a narrative. And
Yeah, sure.
we decided, and Paul and I have worked hard on this, figuring out, okay, what is Triumph mean? Like what is it about Triumph? That did they have anything, or were they just three guys that played guitars? And what meant something to the fans, and what we identified when we really analyzed what the audience was telling us, it was positivity in lyrics. So it was about phrases like you just mentioned, never surrender. It was about those things. And there's so many folks have sent, all over Facebook with tattoos with some of these lyrics. And you realize some of the backstories about illnesses or, bad experiences in life, when that's when the music actually had the biggest influence, was at times were tough and things weren't easy. And we thought, okay, so maybe there's a thread. That's the thread that we have to figure out how to make this show about that. And I have a charity that I've started up here in Canada called Sounds Unite Canada. And it's about helping kids get free music education and keeping music alive in the public school system, and not letting making it cost prohibitive. Just like sports, because I don't think kids should be denied sports. I don't think they should be denied music education. They're like air, water, and food, for the soul, for the brain, for so many things. And so, what we're going to try to do with this show, the goal of it is not so much that it's just Triumph. Yes, it is. There's a power trio on stage, and then you have Mike, Rick, and Gil virtually in the show. So you basically have a 6-piece trio. But the goal is people are going to hopefully leave and be exhilarated and have a feeling of being brought together through music. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. That's what Paul's trying to accomplish. And now Mike and Rick are really into it with me, as is Phil X, as is our manager, Jason. And that's what we're going to try to bring to the audience. We're going to try to bring to them an experience that goes beyond just Triumph's music or a hard rock show, and pull something more out of the show than what you might expect, and deliver that to the audience.
People now are much, much more open to this. It is all about entertainment. Dio maybe came a little bit too soon, but it certainly was the seed and the foundation that was planted then. Kiss are going to be doing something. And if you want to look at the most successful variant of this, then you just have to look at the ABBA experience in London, which plays out to packed houses every day of every single week in the year. So there is a market, there is an interest, and people will come if it's good.
Yeah, Tim, I've been asked a lot about the ABBA show, and what we're doing is completely different. I think the Abbott show is great. I mean, I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen, film of it and so on, and it's brilliant. But it's a residency, and what we built. Triumph was built by playing, all the tertiary markets as well as the Chicagos and New Yorks and Toronto and so on. We had to go out and play the smaller cities. That's the way you broke an act back then, because it was regional radio. There was no internet, as you know. There was no Spotify or anything like that. So you had to go play for the people. That's the backbone of our audience. That's what Triumph is. It's those people, a lot of them from small towns as well as the big cities. And so we decided, Paul and I, again, when we were working on this, we're like, we don't want to do a residency. You could with what we've developed, but that was not the intent. And with a residency, you have a lot of advantages technically, and that's why in some cases it makes sense to do it in one location where you have more control and you don't have to deal with the variables of different venues. But we decided the trick for us was to see if we could take it back to kind of the roots of Triumph, where you would play, the big markets, but you would also go and you would play the small markets, and you would go right to the people that supported us from day one, wherever they are.
That's fantastic. So one last thing. Out of everything that you've done, and I include all the work that you've done with the school and the Metalworks studios and the working with the kids and the charity and the music and the film, what's given you the most satisfaction in your career?
It's hard to say. I mean, at different times, taking Triumph, I think any musician that starts, with your fledgling band, that we all start with, it doesn't matter who, you take the Beatles back. They were in the Cavern Club at one time, right? So they were having a guy in a bar that could fire them, all musicians can relate to that. So it's, getting to the point where you actually have a career in fans and you're selling records. It makes you feel great. But I have to say, as the decades go on, I wanted to stay in Toronto and not tour. I wanted to be with my family here in Mississauga and be with my kids. And so music's allowed me to do that. And so whether it was through Metalworks Studios and all the other great artists that have come through here, and, getting to meet, idols like Tina Turner or David Bowie that have been here, or some of the younger bands at the time, like the Guns N' Roses, or, the whoever that is, coming in next week or whatever, that's been its own source of tremendous fun and pride to some degree, I guess, because I'm proud of our studios. But the school has, to your point about the education, like seeing graduates come out of our school and kind of learn from the things that were developed, like the first studio was built for Triumph. Seeing kids graduate and then go on and have their own careers is absolutely gratifying beyond words. One of our very first graduates became Drake's recording engineer and produces music for Drake to this day. And it's like you couldn't write a Cinderella story any cooler than that one. And we've had so many other graduates that have come through that have gone on to do great things or are in the process of doing great things. Of course, some of them have been out of the school for a couple of years, but some of them have been in the school for 20 years now. So various ranges of age and positions throughout the industry. But I feel a sense of victory or reward every time I hear about someone that actually went to our school and is doing something in their field in music. They're all related to music one way or the other, whether it's performing or writing songs or engineering or whatever. It feels like yet another victory lap of some sort that is just great.
Well, that was Gil Moore there from Triumph. We did a feature a while back with Mike Levine. You may well have missed it. It was a couple of years ago now. You can still hear it. Just head over to the website, which is where you will find it. And that is it for this edition of the show. Once again, thank you very much for watching and listening wherever you are in the world. And don't forget, you can watch and listen to all of the interviews and the features going back to day one over on the website, www.therockandbluesexperience.com. You can also find them on the YouTube channel and over on the Facebook page, where again, you can comment and connect as well. So that is it. Until next time, from me, Tim Capel. Bye-bye for now.